What's Left America. I'm Chris Tritico.
I'm Andy Georgeson.
I'm Chris Bell.
And I'm James Campbell.
What's Left America is coming to you from our new home, Dean's Downtown, in beautiful downtown Houston, Texas. And What's Left America is produced proudly by Left Out Media and brought to you by the generosity of our sponsors and friends, and hopefully someday friends just like you. Today on the show, we're going to cover some wonderful topics. Challenge 2020, Unify the Democrats. Was it a tweet? And where have all the adults gone? And, of course, we're going to end the show, just as always, with Out of Left Field. Let's get right into the show. Challenge 2020, Unify the Democrats. Headed into the 2020 primaries, the Democrats begin their search for a replacement for Donald Trump. The question is, what does that look like? In the wake of the Me Too movement, the Republicans' disastrous run at governance, what is it the Democrats need to put up to bring the country together? If and when President Trump is beaten, he'll leave a trail of destruction, a more divided country, alienated allies, a hollowed-out civil service, politicization, even on the Supreme Court, a huge debt, and even greater income inequality, and emboldened international foes. Now is no time for the Democrats to not be united. So what does the Democratic primary nominee look like?
You know, I predicted for 2019 that there would be such a full field of Democrats running in the primary that we were going to eat ourselves alive and provide a lot of sound bites for whoever the Republican nominee for president ends up being. So you almost already gave me that one for my prediction coming true.
That was a bold prediction.
I think you predicted the sun would come up, tide would come in. But you know, but here's the thing: this is a process that the Democrats need to go through. I think it's going to be painful for us, but we need to figure out who we are as a party, and I think it's healthy. I didn't necessarily think so much when I was making the prediction, but in the long run, I think it will be healthy if we figure out how to do it constructively, because we have a lot of old guard who are very wary of the younger members of Congress, and we have a lot of younger people who are just really impatient with the older guard. And so we are all working on the same team. As far as I can see, we believe the same things. We just differ on how to get to our goals. So if we can have a constructive...
But you have a party in flux, and basically if you go back to 2016, basically nobody could tell you why they were for Hillary Clinton. Anyone could tell you why they were against Donald Trump, but very few people could say, gosh, she wants to do this.
Right.
And that's why back her. And I think that was one of the biggest problems. And I think, I'm a little worried about it, but I think it's going to be a fascinating process because it's going to kind of help the Democratic Party identify themselves. And you're going to have some moderates, and you're going to have some very liberal folks. You're certainly going to have the socialist wing represented. And so I think it's going to be an interesting debate. And when we were prepping and sending around articles, I thought that one article that you sent out, Chris, was somewhat fascinating. And the woman pointing out, don't forget that the moderates did extraordinarily well in the 2018 election cycle. And I think that's oftentimes been overlooked because of the spotlight burning so hard on folks like Ocasio-Cortez.
7 declared candidates and 23 declared I might runs. That's a huge field.
Yeah,
we're just getting started.
So I want to disagree with Chris. I think that they did know why they want Hillary.
Thank you.
Because they voted for her because they wanted the first female president. And I think she had...
Well, that's not a policy reason.
But
you
that's just more identity politics that y'all like so much.
Well, absolutely. But you said that they had no reason for voting for her, and many of them
Or they couldn't identify the reason they were voting for her. That was a major reason. But I can identify policies that she was for. I think that it's absurd to say that Democrats didn't know what to what she stood for.
If you look at social media, most of the people who were posting about that election would say, Democrats would say something negative about Donald Trump, and Republicans would say something negative about Hillary Clinton. Hell, Donald Trump's whole campaign was about lock her up and stuff like that.
Well, that's not a policy either.
No.
That's his point, though. Nobody was saying positive things about their candidate. They were only talking negatively
Okay,
about the other.
yeah.
But
Okay,
but he also said that they didn't know why they were voting for her, and I'm suggesting that they voted for her because many people wanted the
That's
first
not
woman
what
president.
I'm saying. There
But-
just wasn't
but-
a strong policy debate, and it really wasn't a
Well,
battle
well,
of ideas.
no,
and I think it possibly could be
wait,
this.
wait,
Let's
wait,
discuss
wait.
Hold
why
on,
that
one at a
was
time.
That's
not.
not
One at a
true.
time.
Let me just finish my point. So back in 15 and 16, the candidates were Lincoln Chafee, Jim Webb, Martin O'Malley, and Bernie Sanders. The policy debate was around whether we stay in the middle or whether we go to the left. And basically, Hillary Clinton wanted to stay in the middle and try to appeal to the moderates of the party, and Bernie Sanders took the party to the left. Where's the party now? The party now is having a serious discussion about where do we go? We also have a generational change. We have some candidates who are younger, but you also have, the Joe Bidens and those people, even Elizabeth Warren, who would be considered on the left, running, and she's older.
But James, you had Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was the policy guy, and he was moved off the stage. And so, I think that's why a lot of his
Chris,
followers.
you're suggesting that
Let me
Hillary
just finish.
Clinton
That's
had
one
no
of his
power.
followers.
Hang on, James.
Why his followers were so upset is because he had put a lot of things on the table and championed a lot of things that they were drawn to, and didn't see her doing the same thing. And if and I don't know any other way to explain it, but certainly he has moved the needle toward those ideas.
That was like a dime bit of difference between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders on policy. I'll tell you what they were. They were health care and minimum wage. And Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders were on the same page on climate change. Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders were on the same page on most policy issues.
Student tuition, health care, no,
Well,
they weren't.
Well, those were non-starter
But Bernie was
policy
Bernie was
discussions.
further to the left than Hillary was on a
Sure.
lot of those policy points, and
But-
he actually drugged the Democratic Party further to the left than Hillary wanted it to be, so that he could get her to do the things he wanted and to get his people to back off at the convention, if you'll recall.
Okay, so let's
She
talk
had
about.
she had to agree at the convention.
on health care and minimum wage.
But that was a big step, and Hillary had to agree with Bernie on those things at the convention to get Bernie to take the stage and say, vote for her.
Okay, so what are we discussing now? We're discussing the direction of the party.
Yeah, and we're off topic
Yeah.
now.
Well, we're a little bit off topic, but this is it's an important. This is an important discussion. There's a reason that people feel like they don't know what Hillary Clinton stood for. Part of it was that there was no oxygen for her campaign. It wasn't like she wasn't talking about the issues. It wasn't like she wasn't trying to express what her policies were. But what were the questions? The questions were, how do you feel about Trump doing X, Y, or Z? She could not get the journalist did
Explaining
a
emails.
terrible disservice to her campaign and the old fairness doctrine where you give equal time. Trump was sucking up every bit of oxygen in the room. Hillary was constantly on the back foot because she, as much as she tried to say what her policy goals were, no one was interested in that. Everyone was interested in how she felt about whatever Donald Trump did recently. One of the things that she was very interested in was a clean energy program and a clean jobs program. So the environment, women's rights, equal criminal justice reform, which was problematic for her because of some things in the past that the former President Clinton had done. But there were definite issues that people who supported Hillary Clinton knew that she stood for.
Okay,
All right,
It
well,
was-
hang on,
it
hang
was
on.
as you
breaking
just said,
through
but as you
that
just
was the
said,
problem.
they didn't resonate, and so hopefully.
No, I did not say they didn't
moving-
resonate. I
moving
said
for-
that the media did not
Okay.
wasn't
All right,
interested
hold on.
in the policy
Crisco,
discussion.
could you moderate, please?
I'm trying.
Don't say that I said something that I didn't say.
All right, hold on. Let's move forward because I don't want to talk about the past. I want to talk about where we're going now
Right.
and where the party has to go now. So I'm going to talk about a couple of these declared candidates. I'm going to talk about some candidates that haven't yet announced but are going to announce. So I want to talk first about Elizabeth Warren and Kirsten Gillibrand. Both have rolled out that they've announced that they are running. And Elizabeth Warren, I thought, was going to have a lot more steam than I think she actually has.
Oh, because you know what? She's already falling victim to this problem that women who run for office face in that, well, let's figure out if we like her or not. So already we're talking about she's not likable. You know, this is a thing. Women have a much harder. Have real difficulty just running, being their authentic selves. So you have to be strong. You have
But
to
not be a bitch.
You have to, lower the register of your voice. You have to dress a certain way. You can't be too
but
pretty,
Andy,
but you
but
can't
Andy,
be
hang
too.
on. Didn't she? Hang on. I'm agreeing with you, but didn't she have more steam a year ago than she has today?
Well, now she's talking about running for president.
She was talking about that a year ago.
Okay, but now it's getting real. So we're taking our focus off of the previous election and the current president, and we're turning our attention to 2020. And every woman who raises her hand has to pass this likability test. I could not believe it when I just saw that polling shows that her likability is lower than it used to be. And no
if
one
other
asked
people
men,
can talk, if other people can talk, I would just like to. I mean, you've talked for a long time now, and you made your point. But the thing about it is that if you look at journalists, I mean, years ago there was this whole thing about TV anchors and the TV networks and TV stations only hiring attractive females to be anchor women. And so there was this great cartoon that with the married couple watching TV with this hideous looking female, like a witch doing the news, and the man saying, God, she's ugly, but she's a hell of a journalist. So come on. I mean,
wow, you really won over a lot of women with that.
No, but look, likability is part of the game here, and it's true for men and it's true for women. And I do think people like to like their politicians, and that's an absolutely fair thing. If people don't go in and say, God, I can't stand that guy, but boy, he has great policy ideas.
If I could get past this whole, women and men thing, I'd like to focus on the substance of.
It's not unimportant.
I know it's not unimportant.
I know you didn't mean to say that.
But I want to talk about the substance of why Elizabeth Warren is going to have a difficult time. Number one, she's failed to crack double digits in any polling of candidates for the whole year, and I think that's problematic. Two, she tried to play Trump's game of, tweet versus tweet. She was baited into doing a DNA test on, the Pocahontas deal.
Stupid.
And
failed miserably on that.
And so she had some issues that she has to overcome before she can, really compel herself as a real candidate. I think a third thing is, I think with this party is going through a fundamental generational change, and I think that
And she's 69 years old,
yeah,
and that I think is what's dragging her down.
So she's gonna, run into the issue of having those millennial and younger voters really identifying with her. But having said that, I think that she could be a viable candidate. But it's going to be a crowded field.
So
it'll be an opportunity for us to have that debate around generational issues, around policy debates on health care, education, Medicare.
So with that said, we spent too much time on this already. But with that said, Kirsten Gillibrand, she's only 52 years old. Her rollout was a lot smoother than a lot of people have had. When she announced that she was going to run, she did it on Stephen Colbert's show. She didn't have the bumps that the other people have had, and she had a lot smoother rollout. And people have looked at her rollout on a lot better basis than Elizabeth Warren's.
She was early in on Me Too, which
Yeah.
certainly is going to serve her well going forward. She took a lot of hits for coming out so early against Al Franken, but I think that was more from colleagues, and I think most of the country agreed with her, and she's been an incredibly successful politician as she's moved up the ladder. I think going back to Elizabeth Warren, I'm the perfect example of someone who has a great deal of admiration for Elizabeth Warren for her policy chops. No one's better on the
Absolutely.
on all the financial issues than Elizabeth Warren, but I really can't get excited about being her being
Chris,
president because she's just not likable.
But can I do
No,
I
I don't mean that. I'm sure she's lovely, and I read a story about her losing her dog, and I was really touched at the heart.
Chris,
but I just don't,
Crisco, let me do a
Don't like the
quick
party.
refresher. So we have to discuss the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is, the Democrats are going to go through a rough primary campaign, but who emerges from that will have to face Donald Trump. And I think they need to figure out, how do you campaign against Donald Trump? It's not going to be on serious policy issue, because let me remind you of the field in 15. Jeb Bush, Chris Christie, Ted Cruz, Carly Fiorina, Lindsey Graham, Bobby Jindal, John Kasich, all these guys were serious policy guys, and they didn't get to have that discussion. Whoever runs against Donald Trump has to figure out, how do you beat this man in appealing to people that he has convinced that he's one of them.
But America has now had 4 years of him.
Yeah, I just don't know that some of that hadn't worn off with the people seeing him for what he is now. I mean, his base is shrinking. His numbers are shrinking. He has a lower likability rating today than he had when he was running, and it's decreasing.
Well, of course, he's got his base, and he's got beyond his base. I think that he has
people who will go in that boot and vote for him for no
how
apparent
do I
reason.
say it? It was shocking that 53% of white women voted for Donald Trump, and I don't know why that would necessarily change at this point.
Right.
I think we talk about the base, and what is that? 35%,
well, maybe 30,
or
maybe
something?
35. That's a
Maybe
shrinking
30.
base, though.
Yeah, okay. So that's not a lot, but I don't think that any Democrat is going to get the nomination and just be home free because only 35% of the country.
All right,
But why it might change is because in 2018 it did change, and those same suburban women
Right.
who, and I hate that term, but anyway, many of the women who supported Donald Trump hate what they're seeing in Washington, and obviously are trying to give Democrats a chance. And will they in 2020? That is the big question. I think we should talk about Beto O'Rourke.
That's
though,
what I was
too.
trying to get to. I wanted to talk about Julian Castro, but I think I want to go to Beto O'Rourke because of what's been happening with him. He was kind of the presumed front runner there for a little while, and they have come after him hard. And his rollout was met with skepticism, to say the best thing I could say about it is met with skepticism. And people are saying that when he talked about about his policy ideas, that he didn't understand policy. He didn't even understand the Constitution.
Which I think is really interesting given the discussion we're having right here, because that's what he's been hit the hardest on. And I've had several people mention the Washington Post interview that apparently was a disaster, that he really couldn't put forth any policies on much of anything. And the fact that people are picking up on that and seeing that and describing him as somewhat of an empty suit at this point, which I don't think is fair, but that's happening. I think people really are taking this very seriously and looking for people who are going to put forth positions that they can agree with.
The best thing.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
I appreciate you doing the moderating and also directing the
Directing
standing
the-
room only crowd.
I'm bringing the crowd in. I'm bringing the crowd in to
Yeah.
watch What's Left America.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining. Thank
Yeah.
you for joining
There
over
you
there.
go. There you
The
Can
funniest.
you get me another drink?
The funniest thing I saw all week was Sarah Palin tweeting out that Beto O'Rourke does not understand policy.
Let me say this about Beto. This, in addition to, them coming after him, let's think about this. One, he lost the race to the second most hated guy in politics. Two, he's been a 3-term backbencher who's not really put forth any significant legislative wins. 3, he's basically voted moderately on his voting record is moderate. And so he got to explain that away. He said to the Washington Post, he doesn't know if he's a progressive or a what he is. He doesn't know what he is.
The thing that
How can you say that?
Well, the thing that I read yesterday or today, I can't remember when I read it, about Beto that I think hurts him the most was this Congressman Heap from the Valley, the only Republican down there on the border, that he rode back to Washington with when they couldn't catch a plane, and they heard. They live Facebooked it all the way back, and he supported him over his Democratic challenger in the last election. And he said,
Beto did?
Yeah. And he said, when they asked him about it, why aren't you supporting the Democratic challenger? He said, I got to support the person who is most qualified for the job. And that's the way it's going to be. And there's been a lot of people challenging him on those types of things. And he said, I've got to be my own man. And the question they're asking about Beto is he going to be good for the Democratic Party or not? And that's a question he's going to have to answer for the primary voters.
And I think the other thing that people have to be really conscious of is that running a race against, as James correctly pointed out, one of the most hated people in the Republican Party, certainly hated on the Democratic side, and being the only real serious challenger to him versus running for president of the United States, that is a very different campaign. And we've seen this repeatedly. I remember watching Rick Perry 8 years ago, when he was sitting there contemplating getting in, and then, got in, and he was real hot against Mitt Romney and what have you, and then he wasn't ready.
Right.
I mean, he had done none of the stuff to prepare. It's a much, much different race.
So here's the last thing I want to talk about on this topic that Andy just made me think of. It wasn't even in the show prep, but Andy made me think of it about this race for 2020. And that is that while you're running against Trump and you got to figure out a way to run against him, the one thing that people aren't thinking about, I think, is that running this time, the Democrats will not make the mistake of not running an electoral college race. Hillary Clinton made that mistake of not running the electoral college race. She ran a popular race and not an electoral college race, and let Donald Trump go to a county by county race, and that's why she lost. And you're not going to see the Democrats run just a popular race this time. They're going to pay attention to the electoral college.
Well, it is a good thing to learn from the mistakes that were made the last go around.
Yeah, but you can't just run that popular race and let the Republicans go and beat you in the electoral college, because that's where you get elected. This is not a popular election.
We should learn from what we did wrong the last time. And that is something that she did wrong. She could have gone to Wisconsin one time.
Well, Bill was telling her, you need to go to these places or you're going to lose. And she said, I got this, and wouldn't listen to her husband, who was one of the best politicians this country's ever seen.
Except for when he's not.
But he was.
Except for when he's not.
Well, and apparently her message didn't resonate in any of those areas.
Well, but she didn't go. She didn't go.
She got more votes than Donald Trump. Let's not forget that. But we should learn from what we didn't do right in the last election.
But we're not going to run I don't think we should run the last election.
What the Democrats need to learn how to do is campaign using social media as effectively as Donald Trump does. And Donald Trump was very...
Or Beto did.
But Donald Trump was very, so last time he ran, he was a novelty. And since he was elected, he's filled up the room. He's part of the daily news cycle. So whoever runs against him has to figure out how to out Trump in terms of being a part of that daily conversation.
I think that you can out Trump without being an ass about it, and
I'm
that's
not
what the
suggesting
Democrats
that.
have to learn.
Yeah.
You can be good at social media without fostering racism and hatred, and
I'm
that's
not
what the
suggesting
Democrats
that.
have. All right,
Yeah,
let's go.
because Ocasio-Cortez is a master of that.
All right, well, let's move on. Let's start. Was it a tweet? We've used too much time.
Yeah.
And I am going to kick y'all's ass.
Oh,
this week.
my God.
I have
He's
been,
mad today.
What's the-
I have been reading up
All right,
on
James,
every Donald Trump tweet.
Fill us in.
I forget a few of them, but I feel
Fill us
really,
in on
really
the.
good.
Fill us in on the standings there, James.
Andrea has won 2 victories. Chris and I are tied at 1.
All right, there we are. That's the standings for 2019. Was it a tweet? Here we go. Number 1, Martin Luther King Jr. made everyone think that civil rights was a big issue for us.
Not a tweet.
Not a tweet.
Tweet.
Not a tweet. That was fake.
Oh, God. How did I lose that?
I thought that would catch the white guy.
Oh,
I've been stereotyped.
now you're kind of acting like the DNC. Okay.
Number 2, I have tremendous respect for women, and the many roles that they serve are vital to the fabric of our society and our economy.
Tweet.
Tweet.
Not a tweet.
Tweet. Ooh, James. Boom.
I know. I've gone down
Okay,
to,
I'll go first next time because I know you're going to accuse me of just copying.
That's
you.
right. All right, number 3. While all of us agree that the U.S. president has the complete power to pardon, why think of that when only crime so far is leaks against us? Fake news.
Not a tweet.
It's hard because you read like Donald Trump. Not a tweet.
tweet.
So you said
Not a tweet.
you
Not a
said
tweet.
you said not a tweet?
I said not a tweet.
That was a tweet.
Yay. I'm on the board.
All right, number 4. What's the standings? Where are we?
2-1.
2 to 1.
2 to 1.
All right. Number 4. Ukraine was historically a part of Russia.
A tweet.
Tweet.
Not a tweet.
Not a tweet.
Yes! Yes!
Bell
Okay,
takes the
that's
lead.
it.
No, that was number
What?
4. That was number 4. Number 5. Trump only used visa system to hire immigrants when we couldn't find American workers. Totally lawful.
Wait, what?
Trump only used visa system to hire immigrants when we couldn't find American workers. Totally lawful.
Not a tweet.
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 Not a tweet.
Damn it.
Yes.
So are we?
I'm still one.
So what did you say?
I said, yeah,
she
not a
lost.
tweet.
She's
Not a
no.
And you only have 2. I have 3.
So,
What
You
did I
said
say?
tweet.
So Andrea and
No, and Andy said that was a tweet.
I said it was a tweet, so
No,
I was
you
wrong.
didn't.
Yes, she did. That was
wrong.
not a tweet. Andy was wrong.
Bell
Unless you wanna
wins.
change your-
Bell wins.
Bell won.
Yeah.
Bell won outright.
time
Yeah.
ever.
Yes!
First ever.
We are the champions.
It had to happen, ladies and gentlemen. It had to happen. Chris Bell comes through with a victory.
Thank you.
It had to happen.
So now Andrea and Bell are tied at
Here's,
the top.
here's to
And-
the loser.
And the brother is bringing up the
So-
bottom. I'm bringing up the bottom.
So what's the score?
Y'all are tied 1 to 1.
1,
No.
0?
No, 2.
Yeah,
2.
two.
Oh, I didn't know he had ever won
2.
before.
2. Yeah,
Yeah,
last
he
week
won
I
last
tied
week,
with
yeah.
him.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
I
no,
see.
You
that's
were in the
a tie
cellar.
is not, but a
Yeah,
tie.
tie is not a win.
Yeah, that's not a win though. That's a tie. So Andy's still in the lead.
Okay.
All right,
See?
I'd like to thank the Academy.
2, 1, and 1. So there we go.
Oh, my.
All right, Andy's still in the
Well,
lead.
that was exhilarating.
But you keep studying.
All right. Where have all the adults gone? As 800,000 federal employees prepare to go their second pay period without pay, President Trump and Nancy Pelosi enter a new phase in intergovernmental relations. We call it the tit for tat. Pelosi all but disinvited Trump from making the State of the Union until the shutdown was over. She cited unfunded Secret Service as her reason. However, the Capitol Police are the people who handle security for the State of the Union, and they are funded. The next day, President canceled Pelosi's bipartisan trip to Afghanistan and to meet with NATO leaders by refusing to provide a Navy plane, a childish act on both parts. What is gained by either of their acts?
Not a lot. This is getting ridiculous. I know the Democrats see it as a win because people are blaming Donald Trump for the shutdown, and well, they should. And I don't know. We talked about it last week. He's painted himself in such a corner. The only deals that he offers are things that aren't really deals or don't give anyone. I mean, it was explained to me as a young lawyer years ago, if you're trying to negotiate, you've got to give people something to really think about. When you're putting stuff on the table that's only designed to benefit you and not help them at all, like you're not giving up anything, then you're not going to get there.
So the thing that really, when Trump made his speech, what I was looking for was some empathy for the people who.
Right.
are
I was going to
not
get to
working.
that in a little bit, but go ahead. I mean, he didn't even mention it.
Yeah. And so, I think that it's clear that the American people know who's responsible for this. 54% say that Trump owns this shutdown. But you sent out some tweets from Donald Trump, and one that really surprised me was the one that said Hispanics love me.
Yeah.
And so I looked at the PBS NPR poll that shows 50% of Latinos agree with what Trump is doing. And I was like amazed by that. And that's a 19% increase since last December.
That is amazing.
And I was like struck by that because, it just tells me that Trump is actually resonating with people that we might not expect. And that's why it's going to be tricky when the election rolls around.
Yeah.
Did it have a national breakdown, though? I mean, because in Texas, that doesn't seem like it would make any sense at all.
I think that the Hispanic population,
Right.
the legal Hispanic population, feels that the illegal immigrants are coming in and taking.
And they interviewed people
Yeah.
at the when Trump went to McAllen. They interviewed people who were in agreement. And I'll stop tapping
Please.
the table.
Well, no. Oh, so
And
the
they
table.
were in
Okay, but
agreement with Trump on the wall.
and what was the sentiment? The overriding.
He's doing the right thing to enforce borders.
Well, especially people
security.
who are here legally, I know have really strong feelings about that, always have they not? That they don't
Well-
want people coming here illegally.
Do you have any Mexican friends?
Well, I don't think anyone. I don't
Well, I
think.
call them Hispanic or Latino, but yeah, I have quite a few.
I don't think anyone.
Well, the immigrants who are not citizens or non-citizens are actually Mexicans.
I don't think anyone
Well, I don't
necessarily.
look at them that way.
I
I'm
don't
pretty
thi-
much colorblind.
I don't think there's
It's a
anyone that
nationality.
necessarily approves of
FYI.
illegal immigration. There's not anyone that says that illegal immigration is a good thing. I mean,
I
there's
think it's
a-
okay. I don't have a problem with it. Actually, with in a certain in a certain I don't know. In and of itself, I'm not of a mind to promote illegal immigration, but the immigration policy that we have now is so wrong-headed and so broken that we have a system that encourages illegal immigration. And so when you look at it from that vantage point, you can be for these people coming in and not waiting in a line that is an endless line, and basically says that you really don't have a pathway to citizenship. So in that vein, yes, I understand why we have such a terrible illegal immigration problem, but Congress could fix it,
But that
and they
doesn't make
choose
you-
over and over
It doesn't
not
make you in
to.
favor
They,
of
they
it.
can't fix it with
Well,
a panic.
I favor the current situation
They-
of people coming in the way they do because there isn't any other way for them to come in.
Well, they certainly can't fix it with a panacea such as the wall. And as Dennis Nixon, the president of IBC Bank, who offices in Laredo and looks out on the border, told me years and years ago, in 2005 or 2006, as long as folks in Mexico are living on mudslide hills in cardboard boxes, they are going to find a way to make it into the United States. And so, obviously, the United States has to work with Mexico to help them, lift up their economy. And hopefully, the new president of Mexico is very focused on that to, make some improvements in those folks' lives, so they won't want to come here. But they're not going to be denied as long as those are the economic conditions in Mexico. And I do think we have to exhibit some compassion for that. It's a very difficult situation, and so with him just throwing out this, we're going to build a wall. Well,
But-
as even the people who study this closely say, that's not going to fix the problem.
But so,
Stop hitting the table.
so can I
and,
just make one point? So
Andy has me so upset for,
But Chris, you're right. We should be helping other countries to pull themselves up.
Right.
But Trump backers don't want foreign aid and
No.
economic aid going to those countries, unfortunately. And let's review this again. Trump is asking for, almost $6 million for the wall.
$6 billion.
$6 billion for the wall. Last year, he turned down a deal for $25 billion.
In exchange for DACA.
Yeah, in exchange for DACA, but he also wanted to cut legal immigration. So what does that mean? That
Right.
means that you basically take really important tech workers and people from other countries, India, China, Africa, out of the mix, that these tech companies need them to come over and work in their companies. And so to me, that was a non-starter of a deal too. But Trump turned that deal down because his conservative pundits tweeted at him and started calling him a wuss.
Right. And so let's talk about what he offered yesterday. $5.7 billion for 200 miles of new wall, 3 years of legislative relief for the 700,000 DACA recipients, which he canceled. Let's remember that we already had that, and he canceled it.
Yes.
So he's giving back what he took away.
Right.
A 3-year extension for temporary protected status for immigrants whose protections are facing expiration. He canceled that. So he's giving back what he already canceled.
Okay, Chris, as a union attorney, isn't that a tactic that companies use?
Well, but you don't. It's not a negotiation to give back what you already took away.
Exactly.
So $800 million in humanitarian assistance, $805 million for drug detection technology, 2,750 border agents and law enforcement professionals, which I don't have a problem with that. 75 new immigration judge teams to reduce the backlog of court cases. The only two things in there that I agree with are the border agents and the 75 judges.
And if they would focus on those things that everyone has said will work, it would be fine. But and they've had private meetings, and I'm sure all of those things have been discussed, and he knew exactly what the reaction was going to be.
Right, and he knew it was a non-starter from the beginning, but he's offering. He says, I will give you the things I took away, and you give me my $5.7 billion. I mean, that's not a negotiation.
That's not a negotiation. He's not negotiating in good faith. I have a problem with the border, the additional border security personnel, because right now, under the current administration, there are no checks on this on these border patrol agents, and they have license to do whatever they want to do, including going into courthouses and waiting for people to show up for their court cases and arresting them there, arresting them in emergency rooms, in hospitals. Arresting them when they are in county lockups because they couldn't pay a speeding ticket, and so I don't want more of that. That to me that looks more and more and more like a police state at the border.
But if we're
Number
two,
he is not negotiating in good faith, like you've said. He's offering what what had been on the table and that he didn't agree to. But also, it's a temporary. What he's asking for is $5.7 billion to build a wall, which is going to be a permanent wall, in exchange for a 3-year deal. So it's a terrible deal, and no Democrat should take it. But
whether or not
But the people who hear this are going to think, oh, well, the president is offering something. Why are the Democrats not negotiating? And I mean, it was a masterstroke on, I hate to say this, on the Trump side, and the Democrats are going to have to come up with something.
Which is exactly why I've been saying for 2 weeks that the Democrats should have been every day doing something.
You're right.
Yes.
Now, but hang on, Trump didn't sell all of the Republicans. Charlie Dent, former Republican representative, said he is incapable of articulating a plan to establish operational control of the border, which is far more expansive than just simple barriers or walls. The president's own rhetoric is not helpful.
Well, that's the problem, and I don't think it was a masterstroke, and it may sound great at first, and then people see a little bit more and realize there's no real substance there. And I don't have a problem with recommending more border security and more border patrol agents, because that's been a part of most packages. Most people believe if we put
What everybody agreed to anyway.
more agents on the border and greater use of technology to where they can get to places faster, that makes a lot of sense.
That way you stop them before they get in. Right.
Whereas a physical barrier really does
So,
not.
Chris,
But border patrol agents at the border is one thing, but border patrol agents, ICE in courtrooms.
But
and
Andy,
at-
they always had the right to do that. It's just under this administration they've unleashed them more, and that's what you object to. And that's, I think, a lot of people object to the way President Trump is allowing them to operate.
I feel like all law enforcement in the United States needs oversight, and we have problems with police departments because there's a lack of oversight, and we should not create a new problem with border control because all checks have been lifted and they have free reign to go wherever they want and arrest whoever they want. Which, if you are Hispanic and you don't have your driver's license on you and you get picked up by ICE and next thing you know you're being deported but you're an American citizen, I think then you will be a little more sympathetic to the idea that Border Patrol agents need to have a check on their power.
Which they had before this president.
Yes. President.
Yeah,
So all
but-
I'm asking
Chris,
for is
Ann
that we
Coulter-
go back to the original way of doing
Ann
things.
Coulter, who apparently has veto power now, said
Obviously.
the real problem for Trump is he didn't. Trump's proposed amnesty. Coulter tweeted, "We voted for Trump not Jeb. 100 miles of border wall in exchange for amnestizing millions of illegals. So if we grant citizenship to 1 billion foreigners, maybe we finally get a full border wall."
So Trump's policy on immigration has been punitive from the very beginning. One, the metaphoric wall. Two, his policy of separating children from their families, that's been institutionalized. But let's review what the Democrats are offering here, and then let's discuss the go forward, because Democrats are going to have to come up with something that's palatable to the Republicans. And I think the Republican Congress is starting to feel some pressure from this shutdown. And one of the things that the Democrats are offering, they're offering $563 million for immigration judges, $525 million for upgrading the ports of entry, and that's more money than they did last year for judges. That needs to happen, because otherwise these people who are stuck in these basically prisons their cases aren't being heard. They're stuck in purgatory here. While the Republicans and Democrats, I think, are playing politics with this. So they need to figure out a way to get the government going while negotiating these pieces of what the immigration policy is going to look like. But they need to open up the government right now. And what the Democrats are offering is Trump an olive branch to be able to do this. Meanwhile, Trump is trying to pick off Democrats like Vicente Gonzalez down in the Valley, who supported this PAC, the Problem Solvers PAC. Chris probably knows about those kinds of PACs. He served in Congress. And he's trying to undermine Nancy Pelosi. To the Democrats' credit,
that's what Nancy Pelosi said the first week, that they needed to reopen the government and have this negotiation about things that people actually agree on. And there's a lot of agreement about what needs to be done for border security.
Now, there are those who are saying that with Trump's plan out on the table now, it puts Democrats on the defensive to come up with something, because the public, as Andy just said, the public is going to start saying, well, the president's got this plan out here. Now the Democrats aren't doing anything.
It's the same old, same old.
Well, you know that. I know that.
But people who don't follow things closely
Right.
are going to just see that the president made an offer.
Right.
And the Democrats have to come up with
And the Democrats rejected it before he even announced it.
Yeah, he
okay,
just-
Chris, let me ask you a question, Crisco. Trump has spoken. Pelosi has spoken. Who's been missing in action?
Well, thank you. I was just about to bring that up. Because Mitch McConnell, and that was the point I was just about to make as we close this topic out, is Mitch McConnell has abdicated his responsibility as the leader of the Senate.
I thought he was the one who told him to put this out there.
Well,
He said
but-
he'd been meeting with him.
But what Mitch McConnell has said was he would not do anything he would not bring a bill to the floor of the Senate unless the president said he would sign it. And the House has passed several pieces of legislation that he said he will not bring because the president said he wouldn't sign it. That's not the role of the United States Senate.
But Chris, I remind you, that was my argument last week when you criticized me for suggesting that the Democrats going home was not the move that they wanted to do from an optics standpoint. They needed to stay there.
That's
Why?
right.
Ding,
Because
ding, ding,
what
ding.
Mitch
That was a good
McConnell
point.
was not going to do anything.
It was not a good
has
point.
not done anything.
No, that's because,
I thought it was a good
but
point.
that's exactly why I said the Democrats should stay there and pass
And do
legislation.
what?
Because they could send it to Mitch and say, "What are you doing,
They
Mitch
have-
McConnell?"
Oh, that was a
they
good point.
voted.
Yes.
They voted 9 times to reopen the government.
Let's
9
play a
times.
new game. Was it a good point or was it not a
Well,
good point?
no, I'm telling you, my point was right.
They
And
voted 9 times to
Whatever,
reopen
whatever
the
Campbell
government.
said was a good point, but
No.
whatever
Times.
Trico's
no, and what
somehow
and,
they're the
That's
opposite.
right.
and
They're
all they've
catching
done.
Like an Escher
They're catching up with the
drawing.
Republican vote on overturning Obamacare.
No, they'll never catch up with that. But
I'm
all
just so
Mitch,
glad the left is so unified.
all Mitch McConnell has done is give Rush Limbaugh and Ann Coulter the veto power because they're the ones telling Donald Trump what to do. If Donald Trump says this is what I'm going to do, Rush Limbaugh and Coulter say we don't like that. He changes his mind. And if Mitch McConnell's not going to put legislation on the floor, it's Rush Limbaugh and Ann Coulter running the country.
Well, based on Ann Coulter's most recent statement, I would very much like for Samantha Bee to weigh in with some descriptive terms of her.
All right, that's
Anywho.
that's all the time we have. Let's go into out of left field. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. So, in this time of conspiracy theories, I would like to offer a great conspiracy theory that I heard that I just like, this is awesome. So, why have the Republicans rolled over and why are they rolling over and playing dead? Because they are also Russian agents. They're also Russian assets. That I heard from someone, and I was like, "Ooh, that's a good one." But with the more serious question being, why has the Republican Congress? Why do they let the president get away with this? I don't know. But that answer is as good as any other, and that's my out of left field.
Christopher?
Well, we talked about the presidential race earlier, and there's been a lot of talk about how this race is being run and how Beto O'Rourke has changed things on social media and that many of the voters want to be brought inside and made more a part of these candidates' lives and see them on a more casual basis. But no to Beto. I don't need to go to the fucking dentist with you. I don't enjoy going to the dental hygienist myself, and to be reminded of that by somebody else going there. I saw the movie Vice recently, and one of the most uncomfortable moments is having to watch Dick Cheney gargle
stuff.
repeatedly. So
Great movie, though.
great movie. But so anyway,
Cover your eyes when he brushes his teeth.
there have to be some limits there going forward.
So I'm going to bring this topic back to my favorite subject, and that's race. And I say that because if you haven't seen it, there's a clip out there of a Native American veteran beating
You stole my topic again.
Well, damn, you let me go before you, so that's the penalty you
When
have
you
to
want
pay.
to have the last word,
Well, maybe you can add something more profound to this.
I think I will.
But, you know, well, there you go.
It's a high bar.
But anyway, Nathan Phillip, this veteran, was beating this drum, and these kids from Kentucky, Mitch McConnell's state, standing with Make America Great Again caps on, and this one kid is just standing in his space, just staring. And I want you to juxtapose those pictures with the ones from the civil rights movement. And, you know, these 4 girls, you know, these kids that walked into the Little Rock school to integrate it, and the kids on the side just taunting them.
And adults.
And adults. And think about that, and you wonder how racism perpetuates itself to 2019, where you have these same kids who, knowing with all of the cameras out there that somebody's going to post this, but yet they stood there taunting and laughing, and nobody stepped in to do anything. And I wonder, where were the chaperones? Where were the adults that should have went over to that kid and said, "Hey, we need to keep going"? That didn't happen. And so that tells me that we have a lot of work to do when it comes to understanding and being tolerant in this country. And that's my out of left field.
So I too am going to talk about that same event. I saw that tape and it sickened me, and it caused me. I wrote about this on my Facebook page. It's hate is a wall we already have. I was sickened watching the Catholic high school students surround the Native American elders and taunt them in D.C. It makes it much worse that they were wearing their Make America Great Again's hats. The school had advertised that the students would attend this year's March for Life rally, billed as an opportunity for students to live out their faith and demonstrate in support of all life, born and unborn. So it was shock and disgust that I watched the boys mock and harass Nathan Phillips, an Omaha leader and veteran of the Vietnam War in D.C. for the annual Indigenous Peoples March.
Indigenous,
excuse me. These events, both noble in their own right, should have gone off on their own independently. We know about it only because of the racist and mocking of the high school boys toward Native Americans. It hurts to watch. Watching those children taunt Native Americans celebrating their heritage, it simply sickens me. We don't need a wall on our southern border today, because it proved to me that we built walls all across our country. Walls we spent years tearing down have been rebuilt seemingly overnight. I wonder if those kids even realize that those Native Americans were here first. If those kids realize they were taunting an American who fought for his country in Vietnam, I wonder if they care. It caused me to question, what have we become? That's my out of left field. That's all the time we have this week. We'll be back next week. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and please rate us on iTunes. More important than that, what do we need to do, Andy?
Subscribe.
Subscribe. It's all about subscriptions. Go to Libsyn or your favorite podcasting site and subscribe to What's Left America. Much thanks to Vertical Ascension Entertainment for getting us on YouTube every week, and Keegan DeLay, our in-studio producer. We'll be back next week right here at Dean's Downtown in beautiful downtown Houston. Please come down and join us. We'll see you next week.